This is a slightly longer podcast episode today as I chat with my friend Felicity Hayes McCoy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening to an exceptional storyteller talk about her home peninsula of Dingle. Thank you so much for joining me again here on the Traveling in Ireland podcast. Today we are heading to probably the most popular peninsula in Ireland, and that is the Dingle Peninsula. It is probably one of the top I must visit places that I hear about from the people that I work with. This area is quintessential Ireland. Picture-perfect villages, stunning coast, incredible history, and I have with me today a wonderful guest who is going to talk all about it. I am joined today by Felicity Hayes McCoy. Now, Felicity is an author probably best known to North Americans for her charming Finferin series. She is a returning guest and joined me way back in episode 40 when, I think The Library at the Edge of the World had just come out. And then she joined me again on episode 77 to chat about old Irish traditions, which I think is still one of the best episodes I have ever published. And today you are back to talk about your Irish home on the Dingle Peninsula. So Felicity, welcome back to the Traveling in Ireland podcast.
Thank you very much indeed. It's lovely to be back. I hadn't realized, it's been a very long time. We've both been very busy people.
It has. And it was so much fun to talk with you before your first, that was kind of your first fiction novel was Finfair, The Library at the Edge of the World, right?
Yeah, The Library at the Edge of the World was the first fiction novel. I had done 3 non-fiction books before then, and the first of those was The House on an Irish Hillside, which is actually about my home in Dingle and how we found it and the time we spent there and the place. So you can listen to this, you can read the book.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to talk about that later because that is such a good book. It's almost like you're taking people along as you go through the whole process, and it's like, this is what it's like to buy a house in Ireland.
I think that book, which is been in print since it came out in 2013. The reason people love it is that it's absolutely imbued with my own excitement about the place, with the fact that, I've known it. I mean, I'm 71 now, Jodie. But anyway, I am. And I was 17 when I first went to Dingle. And so that's a long time ago. And in a way, it was a very different place. And in a way, it wasn't at all a very different place. And that's one of the joys of it. But I knew and loved it for a long time before I came to live there and love it. And there is an extraordinary pleasure in falling for a place. And I know an awful lot of the people who who go to and fro to Ireland a lot. That's what happens. You just get gripped by the country or by a particular place in the country. I'm Irish, so I was already gripped by the country. But Dingle, the Dingle Peninsula, I grew up in the city. I grew up in Dublin. But the Dingle Peninsula absolutely has my heart.
And I love getting your insight into the local area. It's just always so nice to hear you explain it because, well, number one, you are such a natural storyteller. So to hear you talk about places, it's almost like being there. And then you have obviously the personal experience. So for you to share your home is just so exciting for me. So let's jump into it. Like I kind of said, the Dingle Peninsula is one of those places that people have on their must-visit list. It's a scenic drive that rivals the Ring of Kerry in terms of the beauty and the history. And Slea Head is kind of the mini version of that, right? It's that, you're leaving out of Dingletown and going along the drive and coming back in. So you're making that full circle.
Yeah, I think that the big difference between the Ring of Kerry, which is extraordinarily beautiful, and the Slea Head Drive is the sea, is the ocean. The staggeringly beautiful thing about the Dingle Peninsula, and particularly the end of it, when you go west from Dingletown right down to the tip, and that's your big circular drive. What is staggering is the light. It was the light that first captured me when I was a teenager. And the weird thing is, anecdote, the weird thing is that I arrived in darkness. I arrived from Dublin on a train. And in those days, you came into Tralee, you got a bus from Tralee to Dingle over the Connor Pass, which is a staggeringly an amazing way to approach Dingle town. In those days, there were buses over the Connor Pass.
They took a bus over the Connor Pass. I can't imagine that today.
Oh, trust me, can you imagine what it was like for a kid who had never really been up a big mountain before? You've got the Wicklow Hills around Dublin. You do not have stunning mountains. No, nothing like that. So anyway, I had that shock. I arrived in Dingletown. I waited for another bus. The other bus came. I was a student at the time, and I was going out to study. I was doing Irish and English at university, the Irish language and literature, and English literature at university. And there are 3 different dialects of Irish in Ireland. So there's Northern or Ulster Irish, there's Western, Connacht Irish, and then there's Munster Irish, which is what is spoken down at that end of the country, our end of the country. And I had been sent down to kind of put what you'd call a snos in Irish, a kind of a shine on my dialect. So there I was 17. And it was really a journey into the unknown. And by the time I got to Dingletown, it was dark. And one of the things about the area, particularly then, but even now, is you don't get that reflected light from the city, light from big towns. And the further into the west you go, the more you're just lit by the stars and the moon. So the last bit of the journey on another bus took me into the west. And I remember getting off the bus and I remember standing in darkness with this huge bowl of darkness just glimmering with tiny pinpricks of starlight over my head, like a overturned bowl, and a sense of the mountains, so I couldn't see them because it was too dark, and 1 foot on the tarmac and 1 foot, I could feel it in mud in a ditch. It was like a revelation. And I was absolutely terrified because they had dumped me on the side of the road and I knew where I was going, but I didn't know where it was. I was going to Mrs. Hurley's house. Now here you are in the middle of nowhere. And then I saw coming towards me, torchlight. And it was the man of the house that I was going to stay in. And of course, he knew when the bus was due and he knew where they were going to drop me. And he was just coming down to pick me up. But it felt like the place welcoming me and it felt like the place drawing me in. And I think that is an essential part of the area. If you go there as a visitor and you take time and you take it slow and you look around you and you talk to local people, you actually feel like you're being drawn in and welcomed because it's a small, strong community and it's always had people coming to its shores. It's a peninsula. Dingle is a port. There have always been people coming and going.
How are you not drawn into that? Like I said, you're an amazing storyteller. But back to Slea Head, people come into Dingle, many of them for a day trip. A lot of them will base in Killarney or Tralee. They are making that Dingle day trip and hitting those highlights. So if we're thinking about, spots along Slea Head or in town, what would you highlight for visitors who are maybe just coming in for that short period of time? Let's say they have that day scheduled on their itinerary.
Yeah, I think that, you can get a Slea Head Drive trip, which takes you around. I would really advise people to take the local bus. There's a wonderful local bus service called the NASC, N-A-S-C, which means link. It links the villages back west of Dingle. And it began a few years ago, and Dingle was actually a sort of a starting point for what's going to be a rolled out nationwide rural initiative.
Is this a local link that they're working on?
Yeah, local link. And they are small buses. They are used by local people. I won't go into it because your people don't need to know, but it's fantastic in terms of the community. There are special ticket prices for school kids, so school kids can go around and visit friends in other villages. They're not dependent on their mums and dads to drive them to and fro. But as a visitor, you can turn up in Dingletown, look at the timetable. The buses go in both directions around the Slea Head Drive, and they stop at the villages along the way. And that's their purpose, is to be a local bus service. But it takes you through fantastic scenery and it drops you along the way in different villages. So you can go to Dunhuane, which is the last parish before America, the last village. You can go to the village near me, Ballyferreter. You can go to Ventry. You can go all the way around. And there's very clear, timetable. You can go in any place and find out, go to the local tourist office, go into local shops. Not expensive. You can even get to chat to local people on the buses. And you could take a whole day, and you could even, if you felt like it and the weather was good enough, go to one place along the way, have a cup of tea, have your lunch, whatever it is, walk to the next village, but pick up the bus there and go back around. So you can actually make a day out of it. And I see a lot of people doing it. I see a lot of visitors doing it now. That absolutely would be a recommendation from me.
So smart. And I love that this is something that's happening now. We're seeing it more and more with the small buses that are making these. They're not really hop on, hop off trips, but they're very similar to that, to where they are very usable, not only for locals, but for tourists who maybe don't want to rent a car.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that one of the beauties of being in that area is that you're actually, in one way, you need a car, you need transport. If you have enough time and you're up to it, you can walk. There's fantastic electric bike hire available as well, which is another brilliant thing to do. I think at my age, I'm happy in the bus, but you see people going around in the electric bikes and it's brilliant. And the electric bike hire, which you can start off with in Dingle, will pick up the bike. If you don't want to do the whole trip around, you can organize to go to a certain distance, and then they will literally come and bring you back. So there are all sorts of, for your different abilities or different amounts of time you've got, these things are thought through and catered for. But the fewer cars there are on the roads, the better. And it's so much better if you can use public transport. It's so much more fun. It's so much better for the environment. And it takes a bit of stress off drivers who might have arrived and not be used to that kind of driving on those kinds of roads. The Slea Head Drive is so spectacular, but it can daunt people who aren't used to driving with the ocean, and the drop to the ocean there on one side of you. And also people can get nervous because now they've changed it, so they're trying to make it one way, so people aren't coming against each other. But local traffic is still going to be coming against you because there are farmers back there. Now, the farmers are absolutely fine. They can back up if they know how to. They know where the backup points are. But I've seen an occasional tourist kind of thrown. I mean, it's fine. Everybody stops and everybody chats and it's all grand. But it can be much more relaxing to go for public transport or to take a bike.
Very good advice. Now, the one thing I think I noticed the most on Slea Head is that you get the backups, especially in some of those really popular spots, like hold a baby lamb. That sign always back up. The statues on the very end, the Christ and the cross statue at the very end. And then there's at least one person every year who tries to drive down Dunqueen.
Oh, there's another tip. There's another tip actually that's quite useful. Be careful of relying on sat-nav. You are so much better advised and you will actually have a nicer time if you see somebody who looks as if they live there and I nearly said roll down your window, which shows you how old I am, let down your window and just stick your head out and say, am I in the right direction for whatever it might be? Because some of those people who insanely drive down, I mean, basically what you get in Dunqueen is there is this spectacular, and it's a wonderful walk down, zigzag, very steep way down to the little harbour there. It is really, really a wonderful thing to do. Very steep, mind if you're elderly or arthritic and you're coming back up again. But it's fab. But it absolutely is not a place you should drive down. You will get stuck because, there are dogleg bends.
It's so narrow. And the turns, they're not gentle.
No, they are not. And when you get stuck, somebody with a large tractor will come and rescue you eventually. But that too, it's an adventure, but it's not advisable. It's not the most entertaining thing you could do. And it means that local people have to come and rescue you. So don't do it. They have lives of their own. But I think you're right. There are certain places along the way that people instinctively want to stop at, or they've heard about it. They've seen photos online. It's worth, if you see a bit of a crowd someplace, saying to yourself, it's perfectly possible that 5 minutes further on, there's something that's just as interesting and just as much fun, and you will be able to pull in and you can take photos. Be absolutely assured anywhere around the Slea Head Drive where you stop to take a photo will be a stunning place to take a photo. No question about that. And the baby lamb thing is great fun. It's very nice. But if you find that it's crowded, there's a lot of sheep. There are lots of sheep. And again, it's a question of if you go a bit around the Slea Head Drive and you stop someplace like, say, in Ballyferreter for your lunch in a pub, go for a little bit of a walk. If it's the right time of year, the fields will be absolutely full of baby lambs. You probably can't hold them. In fact, you cannot hold them. I must say that. I don't want my neighbours thinking I'm sending a one.
Americans are crazy for sheep. That's just a fact. Americans are crazy for sheep.
Do not open field gates, but you can take a lovely photograph of the lamb. And lambs are curious little creatures. They probably will run up and stick their nose through the gate at you. What I'm really trying to say is it is such a rich experience. And it's been curated to a certain extent for visitors, partly because people are trying to live their lives back there as well, ordinary farmers and fishermen and people taking their kids to school and so forth. And you don't want every corner to have somebody standing on it taking a photograph. But go a little bit slower. If you possibly can, stay a little bit longer. And don't be scared to talk to people. The best ways of finding out what little corner to turn or what bowring to go up, it's the advice that comes from somebody you happen to meet along the way.
Excellent advice. Going back to the town of Dingle, I think one of the funniest things that I see in groups and things is people say city. We're going to these cities. And I try to tell people there's only a handful of cities in Ireland and everything else is small towns. And Dingle is maybe even could be termed as a village. I mean, it's like a postage stamp. It's 5 minutes walk from the marina to anything. So it's very, very small. And during the day, the town feels very busy. But that does change a little bit at night when those tour buses leave. Things get a little quieter, still a very popular place to be. But can you tell us a little bit about the quieter side of Dingle that maybe most visitors, especially if they're there in the day, wouldn't maybe realize?
I think that particularly if people do come in on a day trip, if they come in on buses, and I know this to be true because I know people in the tourist office constantly try to say this to visitors and they always feel their message doesn't quite go through. The town is hilly, and where the tour buses park down at the front, down near the marina, you've got a flat, straight run of shops, all of which are great shops, including a lovely place you can drop in and buy books, said she, but got that one in. But there is more to the town than just walking up and down that straight track. And it does involve maybe climbing up Green Street, which is quite a steep hill. But you can go around the edge. You can go around the bottom. It's really worth getting one of the beautifully drawn town maps that you can get in the tourist office. Because when you look at that, you can see that, as you say, it is really small. So you're not taking a detour if you don't climb up Green Street. You're going a very short walk around a slight, less of an incline to get to the top of Main Street. And there are really interesting places to wander around. There's a fantastic new thing about to happen in Dingle, and that is, about the Phoenix Cinema being about to be reopened?
Okay,
so in Dyke Street, I always want to call it Daggett Lane because Daggett Lane is what people call it, but in Dykegate Street, which is one of the streets off Main Street, there is a cinema. It's closed at the moment. It's called the Phoenix Cinema. If you walk past it, you will recognize it instantly because it's sort of 1950 sub 1930 Miami Art Deco cinema. Okay. But scaled down because of where it is. Now that was a fantastic place in the town in the past because, there wasn't a lot going on. It was a gathering place. It showed films. I'm talking about way back. In my time when it was still open, it was great and local people went to it as well. Prior to that, because it had a sprung floor, it was also a dance floor. It doubled as a dance hall. Anyway, it closed after the pandemic, after COVID, and it closed down and then it didn't open again. The family who owned it wanted to sell it. It was being sold. Nobody was buying it. Center of town, big deal real estate. Oh lordy, who's going to buy it? What's going to be built there? And into town, as it were, metaphorically, on a white horse, rode the film star Cillian Murphy and his wife. And they bought it. They bought the cinema. It's currently closed. It's currently being redeveloped into an art center and a cinema and a community space. And the beauty of it is because they are interested in the area and they know the area and they've lived in the area. They really are taking care to get input from local people as to what we need and what we want, what visitors are going to need and want. It's going to be there as a resource for things like the local literary festival. It's going to be fantastic. And they're being terribly sensitive to its appearance. So I don't know when your visitors will arrive, but it will take some time for the development to happen. But if you walk past that, you're seeing something about to flourish or that has flourished. And further down, there's one of my favorite places in the whole town, which is the Café Lither bookshop. And the Café Lither bookshop is iconic. It's a very small bookshop. It's been open for a very long time. It has a cafe in the back. It is just a wonderful place to go into because it's quirky and it's idiosyncratic, but it's also really, really brilliant place to buy books if you're interested in local history or the Irish language. Really, really interesting, very well curated selection of books, and a little coffee shop at the back. Quirky as anything and not to be missed.
Lovely. I know I've walked by the theater since the pandemic, and I've just thought, wow, it's just too bad that this is sitting empty. So I'm so excited to hear that something really great is going to happen with it because it is an amazing space.
Oh, it's fantastic. And the real joy to those of us who have always loved it is that it is right in the heart of town and it's building on what was already there. And that's one of the joys of the whole area, that yes, it is catering for visitors. And like you say, it's right up there on people's bucket list because it's kind of hit public consciousness. The Wild Atlantic Way itself is very attractive, but I would say Dingle is so special that it deserves it. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes places can just get taken over. I've seen it in England some time ago when people were less aware. Small villages could just turn into sort of Disneyland. That's not the case with Dingle, partly because there's a real living community there. And things like the cinema still belonging and still being part is what keeps it that way.
Oh, that's so exciting. Another thing about Dingle that maybe the average visitor wouldn't know is that it is a Gaeltacht. This is an area where Irish is still spoken daily. Like you said, the first time you went, you were down for Irish school. And I know that you speak Irish quite beautifully. Can you kind of express what it means to live in an Irish-speaking area? How visitors might think to approach this in terms of their own visit, maybe some places to linger, spots to seek out to respectfully hear and engage with the language, not to treat it like it's a lion in a cage. I came here to hear some Irish, but to really respectfully approach it, culturally appreciate it, that kind of thing.
Well, I think that Dingletown itself, when I first knew it, which goes back a while, there would have been a certain amount of Irish there, but it wouldn't have been designated a Gaeltacht area. The Fíor Gaeltacht, which means the real Gaeltacht, would have been back west. It would have been beyond the bridge. Once you pass the bridge at Milltown, you go back west. But people from back west always worked in town. People in town had shops and they dealt with people back west. Everybody learns Irish at school. The local people would have known Irish and they would have spoken beautiful Irish. And now there's a growing interest in Irish across the whole country. So the thing is going in two directions. In one sense, the fact that we all have television, we all have the internet, there's much more mobility happening, or just physical mobility happening. There's a watering down of local language, of native languages in lots of places. But on the other hand, there's an upsurge of interest. And what you'll find in Dingletown in particular is a lot of shops will have signs up if they speak Irish. And those signs there's a series of things that people hang in the window and they'll say, Déantar no Oscail Monso, which means business is done in Irish here. But underneath it, it'll be saying it in English as well, because there's you said respect, and that's nice. Visitors who come in, it's nice when they respect the language, but it works in both directions. Like I said, it was a port. There've always been foreigners coming in and out. There's always been a great interest in other people's languages. When I first came back west, the son of the house I stayed in didn't have great English, but he had worked in the States and he had very good Spanish. He had gone out, an awful lot of people had gone out, and he'd worked in the garment district in New York, and practically everybody in the place he worked in either spoke Irish or Spanish. So there's an awareness that bilingualism and multilingualism is exciting and interesting. Hey, that's great. So if people come in and they have an interest and they're not bothered that a couple of words of Irish are thrown in there, then you can almost have, my husband is English and he doesn't speak Irish fluently, but he's a musician, and I've seen him very often sitting in sessions where we'll come away and he'll say, so-and-so said such and such in the middle of that about a tune. And I'll say, yeah, he said it in Irish. And he'll say, did he? And so because it's a subject he knows something about. And the thing is that if people are interested and if people just ask a question or say, around the town quite often you see little signs saying how to say just little things like hello or how are you or thank you. And if people will pick those up, and they're not hard to pick up, and just say them, just use them, it's nice. People like it. And you might end up by getting into an interesting conversation, not in Irish, but an interesting conversation about Irish.
Yeah, I was out at, oh goodness, and the name now escapes me, the oratory, the Glar's Oratory. And they had a little sign up that said you could have a discount if you could say something to them in Irish. And so I did. And, with my very American sounding Irish, I said, Shiahuish, hello. And he just started off and did like this whole paragraph. And I'm just looking. I know this much. Tukupla vocal, but you will find that. And I think it makes it a really approachable kind of way to try the couple of words, anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people automatically, even when they're speaking English, you'll hear them, they'll say slán when they're going out the door because it's the Irish for goodbye. It means safe, be safe. They'll say, they'll come in the door and they'll say consanto or consocorsi, which is how are you or what's the story, how's it going? And they won't even realize they've said that in Irish because they're in their mind, they're talking to somebody in English and they're doing their business in English on this occasion. So it does slip in and out. Go to Mil Mahagat, which is a very big mouthful for thank you. It means, may there be 1,000 goodnesses to you, which is a long way of saying thanks, has kind of in modern Irish been squeezed down. The kids just say Garamila, and Garamila you'll hear a lot. So there is a sort of a modern thing happening, as well as people being very proud of keeping the language pure. And that's a whole conversation you can have with people too. And I think that if you go back west, if you go into a pub back west and you sit a little bit longer, you will hear Irish spoken around you and you'll hear people going in and out of the language. Another tip, if you are in a car and you're driving about, if you tune to Radio na Gaeltachta, which is the Irish language station, great music, so you'll hear music going on all the time, but you'll also get the rhythm of the language in your ear in the background. And that's a fun thing to do. And as you drive into Dingle Town, you'll see it appearing on your dash dial and you can tune to it. And that's a fun thing to do.
Yes, very much so. Gosh, it's such a fascinating area due to that. I think just the cadence of the area is different than so many other places. And I think that's one of the things that draws people in addition to all the other really great, the sights and the history and the pubs. And
I think that's right. And I think another thing, you mentioned it, the museum in Ballyferriter. That's a local museum. It's in the former schoolhouse. So that would have been our neighbour Jack, Lord have mercy on him. His generation would have gone to school in that building. But that's a little local museum in the middle of nowhere, a little rural museum, which punches way above its weight. And I'm the daughter of an historian who worked in the National Museum in Ireland. And I am here to tell you that we were very, very lucky back there because for years it was curated by one of the most prestigious archaeologists in the country, a woman called Isabel Bennett. And she lived locally. She's married to a local farmer. And she had a fantastic relationship with the museums around the country and with the National Museum. And so it is a very, very interesting place to visit because it's small. It won't take a lot of your time, but the quality of the curation is very high. And there are fascinating exhibits in there. And also, it's almost the story of the area. So if you went straight there and walked in, just walked around the storyboards, you would get a really strong sense of the history and the geography and the geology of the place, which is more than worth doing. And there's a little coffee shop.
And that's kind of where I was going to go with next is that, your house on the Irish hillside is near Ballyferriter with that terrific museum. But I would venture to say that most people, by the time they get, because Ballyferriter is kind of at the far end of Slea Head, like that's about where they're making that turn to come back to Dingle, right? So they've had the majority of highlights of that drive are before you get to Ballyferriter. And by the time they hit Ballyferriter, it's like you're on the downward slope. And I would say that probably most people are scooting by without even stopping in that area. And you've got you have walk to the headland and the beach, and Iron Age promontory fort, the 6th century monastic settlement, and then the museum that you just talked about. So it's so easy to pass by that because you've seen so much already that maybe you're in a hurry to get back to Dingle for a boat trip. Or maybe you're like, okay, the time's ticking on and we've got to get back to Killarney or Tralee. But yeah, Ballyferriter it really is a nice surprise.
Yes, and that beach, Bilbon, which is the long beach, which is just outside Ballyferriter village, and it's signed very clearly. You take a sign towards the sea, you take that turn, and it's not far down. It is a beautiful beach and so often empty. I mean, miles of beautiful sand, and it's a lovely place to walk. Local people walk there a lot. The other one is if you stop at Ventry village, Ventry Strand is absolutely stunning.
And a lot of people skip that because it's right at the beginning.
Yes, yes. But I have to do a shout out for the wonderful post office in Ventry Village. And it's above the Strand, and it is a fabulous deli. Wonderful place to stop and make yourself up a little picnic. You can sit outside. They have a great coffee machine, really high level coffee machine, actually, if you're into coffee. They are into sustainability. They have lots of organic produce. It's a real post office, so you can buy a postcard and actually send a real postcard if you fancy it. They have lots of local produce. Fabulous place to buy souvenirs. Just little bits and pieces. Now, obviously, some of it is food and you won't necessarily want to travel food back with you, but they'll have books. They have lovely things like candles and locally made interesting things, and all beautifully chosen. Local people tend to go there a lot for sit outside and have a cup of coffee. It's a great place to sit and watch the world go by. And the beach is a joy. So I would definitely stop at Ventry if I were going around. And I would definitely be possibly that other beach and the museum in Ballyferriter.
It's really an area that I think people know the top highlights, but these other little places that tend to get missed, I think that's where kind of Ireland shines, right? That there's these beautiful, amazing marquee sites, but it's when you take the time to go to the spots that you see everybody else passing by, that you have those moments that make your trip. It takes it from this is a really great trip to the most amazing experience happened. Are you planning to hit the road in Ireland? When it's time to compare car rental prices, check out Irish Car Rentals, my top pick for great vehicles and outstanding customer service. Plus, I have a special treat for you, an exclusive 10% discount when you book using link IrelandFamilyVacations.com/ICR. Start your journey the smart way, save more, and explore more with Irish Car Rentals. Again, that's IrelandFamilyVacations.com/ICR for your 10% discount.
Yeah, and I think it says this is a really great trip and this bit of it belongs to me. I found this bit. This is my part. I get that an awful lot with my readers writing to me and getting in touch and saying they get really possessive about the area, which is beautiful. And this is their rock. This is the rock they sit on whenever they come. They make for it. They arrive, they hit the ground running, and then they sort of hold the place to their hearts and feel that they're home. Really, it is the strangest thing. And more people than I can count have said that to me. I feel like I've come home. And it doesn't mean they want to do what I did and live there, but it means that it speaks to them. And I think that if you are in the crowded places, you mightn't hear the voices clearly. That came to me all of a sudden, but it's true.
Oh, that's such a great way to put it. Wow. I mean, that's probably one of the most powerful statements I think anybody has ever made, is that if you are in the busy places, the voices of Ireland, you're not going to hear them clearly. That says so much.
And the thing about the area as well is that so many of the people who you will encounter as a visitor, people in shops and people who, organize your trips for you or take you out to the island on their boat. And incidentally, we haven't even gone to the boat trips out to the island, which, and wow, there is an experience going out to the Blasket Islands, just staggeringly wonderful. However, I digress. And what I was trying to say is an awful lot of people do several jobs. So you'll be the person who serves you in the pub. Their dad might be a fisherman, and the fish you're getting in the pub might have actually been caught by their dad. Or lots of the people who run the restaurants, they will be local people. And I met a wonderful woman last year whose name is Catherine Barrett, and she is a local woman, and she runs a business with her husband, which is called My Ireland Box. Have you ever come across that?
I have heard of My Ireland Box, yes.
Well, it's one of those things where you sign up and you get a monthly box from Ireland, which contains things that are Irish that might interest you and that relate to the time of year. But this is put together by somebody who lives in the area and who is a small business person herself. And so she finds people who are artisan creators who make wonderful things. And I was really touched and excited that this Christmas she included one of my books in her Christmas box. And that was the kind of happenstance of being people who lived in the same area. Because literally she kind of came across me as we were both having coffee in Inventory Post Office. And she had read one of my books. I hadn't met her. And then this thing happened. And off those books have gone to the States and elsewhere around the world in her box because of people talking to each other, because of people living in a space, not just because of the business, but because of the people doing the business. And that's joyful when you go there to have that sense all around you.
That's so incredible. And I think that's a really great lead into talking a little bit about you and your books, because unlike most of the people who join me on the podcast, you are not in tourism. You do not have a tourism business. Nobody's going to come out to you and say, Felicity, we want a tour. You are an incredible author. You, like I said at the beginning, most North American audiences are probably going to know you best for your Finn Farron series. But before that, you had your memoir, The House on an Irish Hillside, Enough is Plenty, followed that, I believe. And then you did do a guidebook to the Dingle Peninsula, Dingle and its hinterlands, which is very, very good. But now's the time to talk about you. Tell us what you've got going on and, a little bit about where people might learn a bit more about your books and maybe tuck into one or two.
Okay. So thank you very much. Yes, the Finn Farron series of novels are set, people always think they're set in Dingle and on the Dingle Peninsula. They are certainly inspired by it. But in fact, they're set in, I took the liberty of creating an entirely new peninsula for Ireland, which exists somewhere, I always say, between Cork, Kerry and Clare. And I peopled it with characters, and I literally started by drawing a map. I drew a map of the peninsula that I invented. And the protagonist in that series is a local librarian. So it's their novels, they're what is known as uplit, in the sense that they are, the word cozy gets used a lot about the kind of genre that I write for. And in America, it has a slightly different meaning to the meaning it has over in the UK, because they're not marshmallow. They're not escapist. I don't ever want them to be thought of as escapist. I think of them as empowering. They're about community and joy and enthusiasm, and they're rattling good stories, I hope, and they've got real characters in them, but they presume an optimistic ending. They are people who are in love with each other.
They're insanely relatable is what they are.
Relatable. There's a good word. Thank you. I will use that from now on. So that series is huge fun to write. I did an awful lot of writing for television and radio before I went into books. In fact, I started life in theatre and television and radio. And so, yeah, I wrote for drama series. I wrote for one of the series that would have gone to the States. It was Ballycus Angel. So there's that sort of shape of creating a community and letting people interact with each other and just seeing where the stories go. The books that you mentioned, the nonfiction books, are still out there. The House on an Irish Hillside is comparatively recently. I wrote in 2013. That's when it first came out over on this side of the ocean. It was available in the States as well. But more recently, it's been republished by Open Road Media in the US. And they've done the most stunning cover for it. I really love the cover design because they based it on a photograph I took myself of a place in the area, but they turned it into an artwork. And I keep thinking I want to lean on them to let me have an image that I can frame and put on my wall. Anyway, The House on an Irish Hillside is out there and available very much so in the States because it's a US company, and they major on ebooks. So if people are traveling, which I love, they can download the book and they can actually take it with them. If you're in Dingletown and you want to buy a copy of The House on an Irish Hillside, the Cafe Litter always has signed copies. They're lovely. Whenever they get new ones in, they ring me up and they say, come sign. The tourists want them. Visitors like signed copies. So the other books are out there as well. There, you can get them anywhere. You can get them online. You can get them in any all good bookshops. In the US, some of the novels have been published. They're always a few steps behind because they come out on this site first. 9 languages, translated into 9 languages. The current book was simultaneously published in Italian, French, Spanish and English.
Does that just blow you away? I mean, honestly, does that just blow your mind? I've dropped a book and now it's available in 9 languages.
It's crazy. And I have to tell you this quick story because it kind of ties together the whole idea that there are no strangers, just people that you haven't met yet. and made friends with. Because when I'm writing a book, every so often, if you're tired and you get up and go and have a cup of tea, but you can have too many cups of tea. So sometimes I will just look at social media. And I was on social media in a break one day, kind of the book in my head and working on my screen. And a DM came up on my screen. And it was from somebody I didn't know on, I think it was Instagram or, one of the social media platforms. And bells ring when it's from somebody you don't know. And I kind of checked and it was coming from South Korea. And I thought, oh my Lord, what's this about? And is somebody going to break into my bank account? And then I suddenly remembered that my most recent book had been translated into South Korean. And I thought, I wonder. And I thought, I'll have a go. And I clicked on the thing. And what I had was a fascinating sort of 10-minute conversation in English, because I don't speak South Korean, but the rest of the world is rather good at speaking other people's languages, with a woman who said, I'm in Seoul. It's the middle of the night in Seoul. I saw you were online. I'm sitting up breastfeeding my baby and I'm just here and I'm reading a book and I'm reading your book. I come from the city. I'm married to a guy who comes from a village way, way out in the country. And I just have to tell you that in Mary Casey, and Mary Casey is a mother-in-law character in my Tarrant series. In Mary Casey, you have written my mother-in-law. Now, obviously, she was married to a lovely guy from the countryside whose mother hadn't got much time for women from the city, who probably didn't know how to milk a cow. And it was just extraordinary to me that, there at the other side of the world, there was a woman reading a book, holding her baby. And, the world is full of people who try and tell us that we're all different and try to divide us. And the truth of the matter is, there are friends everywhere you look. And if someone looks foreign, the chances are they recognize your mother-in-law. It was a joy to me. And I think it sort of underpins everything I try to write about. The idea that one of the things, travel broadens the mind. And one of the things that it teaches us is that we are all exactly the same in many ways. And I hope that's what people who come to visit Ireland feel, that they don't feel it strange and foreign. They feel it's fascinating and different. And then they find the places where they can make connections. So we'll keep bringing them back.
Oh, that's so lovely. You always do this. I mean, honestly, if you're new to the podcast, go back to the other 2 podcasts Felicity joined me on and listen, because she's always wrapping things up with these beautiful phrases that just make you say, yes, Felicity, I'm listening. You do such a good.
Well, I hope I gave you some positive, not airy-fairy things that people can do.
Oh, no, so many good bits of advice. Because, I always end with the 3 things you should do. But I mean, I don't know that you've held anything back. The 3 things: go to Ventry Post Office, Ballyferreter Museum, and keep watch out for the cinema to open again. I mean, that seems to me like the top 3. And I don't know that you've held anything back that people need to know.
Well, I just hope people have a wonderful time. And one of the things that I carefully wrote it down because it's the end of the day and I'm tired, but this is a great truth and a delight to me. Some of my recent books have been sort of set in a hotel, and the standalone novels, I did one that was set in a hotel. And for that, I did a lot of research into the tourism industry, the hospitality industry. And I'm personally very interested in ecotourism and the idea of, slow tourism. And Ireland Unrushed is a new initiative that the Irish tourist authorities are eager to sort of say to people, look, stay a little bit longer or go a little bit slower, enjoy more. Well, here's the thing. The Dingle Peninsula was the overall winner in Ireland's Greenest Places 2025. So when I was writing my last book, my book that's just come out, it's called Once a Year, which was all about green tourism in the sense that it was set in a hotel where a family was dealing with challenges of green tourism. Dingle was winning that accolade.
You were closer to it than you knew.
Oh, you see, life follows art.
Felicity, it's always such a joy for me to get to sit down with you and have a conversation. So let's wrap up with, obviously, you've told us that a lot of your books that are available in the U.S., obviously you're going to find them in the regular U.S. places. You do have some books, though. Your 2 newest are not available in the U.S. market. So how could people get a hold of those, assuming they're not going to show up in Dingle and go into the bookstore?
Yeah. Well, this happens a lot because people who like my books kind of don't want to wait for the 2 years or 3 years or whatever it might be before they turn up in their territory. And there are super online outlets in Ireland. So if people wanted to go online and go to some place like Kenny's Bookshop in Galway places that are accustomed to shipping overseas, and sometimes will ship overseas at very good rates. But you can just go onto a website and buy from Ireland, even if you're not in Ireland. And I think that's a great thing to do, because those, again, what you're doing is you're not going to the big behemoths, and there's no reason why you shouldn't do that too. But you can find independent, Irish, family-run websites where people who know their books and have been booksellers for a long time will get the book for you that you want, put it in the mail for you, and it'll be there on your doorstep, and you can feel you're coming to Ireland because it's come from Ireland.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a pleasure.
Well, it's been a delight for me, and it's so great to see you again. It's really cool. So when you're around Dingle again, give me a shout and we'll have a cup of tea.
Always. Thanks so much for sticking around for this episode with Felicity. I literally could talk to her for hours. She is such a joy to talk to, and she loves Dingle so much. You can hear it in the way she talks about the area, and I hope that she gave you a few more ideas that may not have been on your itinerary. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can't leave a review on your podcast app, visit IrelandFamilyVacations.com/trust and just say a couple nice words for me on Trustpilot. I would really appreciate it. If you have questions or comments on this episode, you can email me, Jody, Jody, at IrelandFamilyVacations.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, slán go fóill.